I'm disappointed that we are in the relegations, you know, like the worst thing is to disappoint the organization and the fans, because everyone cheered for us and everyone thought that we'll be like top 4, top 3 team at least. And then we end up like 8th place in relegations, and just like I'm ashamed of myself, you know, that me and my whole team did not perform as well as we should have. And like it's all about small steps right now to requalify for LCS, to win versus Copenhagen Wolves Academy, and then week per week to actually give our best and to achieve something.
And welcome back to the European LCS Summer Promotion Tournament, where we actually just heard from Jankos talking about needing to step up. Giants have already secured their spot in the upcoming summer split, leaving only one seat up for grabs between Roccat and the Copenhagen Wolves Academy as we head into our second best of 5. Just before we take a look at the lineups, we do want to get your thoughts. So as a reminder, hop onto Twitter and tell us, because we still want to know, which promotion tournament team do you think has the most potential to impact the LCS summer split and why? Keep in mind, Reason are no longer one of the teams you can talk about. Send your answers to us at LOL Esports, include that hashtag LCS, and we'll chat with our analyst a little later in the day. So for now, for a tale of two opposite teams, as we look at Roccat and Copenhagen Wolves, I would like to welcome Deficio to the desk after joining us from Casters. And let's talk about the big difference between Copenhagen Wolves Academy and Roccat. Roccat were expected to do fantastic. The team themselves said top 2, top 3. They almost made Worlds. Copenhagen Wolves, formerly low in the lines, nobody expected anything. They take second. So talk to me about the ups and downs and how they've both surprised. Let's start with Deficio.
I mean, Copenhagen Wolves Academy coming into the split, when you talk to the players as well, they're like, we're just here to have fun. I mean, we're 5 friends back from Holland. We want to see what we can do. They never even talked about making LCS as a thing in the start of the split, and now they're here. What we will see, though, I think, because now the expectations for the players themselves, for Copenhagen Wolves Academy compared to Roccat, there's going to be a lot more pressure, obviously, on the side of Roccat that could affect them in terms of nerves. But also, we might see Roccat work a lot harder at making sure everything is perfect and be ready for this one important match.
Yeah, and this is actually what I expect from Roccat as well. I think right now, being on the ropes, I think they will perform really, really well and shine through.
Okay, but that's not fair, because everybody said they're going to perform all split long. Every player, every team talks about Roccat off the rift in scrims, but we've never seen that. We've never seen that in the LCS.
Yeah, I learned to believe. So I believe that Roccat shows finally what they're capable of.
For me here, it's more about the rest of the EU LCS teams knowing how to play against Roccat and punish them if they are too passive or if they make mistakes. I have an AD carry who eats 5 or 10 skill shots per game. I don't see Copenhagen Wolves Academy on the same level in terms of punishing mistakes. Where at the game stat against Origin, it was very clear there was a difference in level between the teams. And that's why I think Roccat can get away with more stuff here. And that should be, of course, in their advantage.
Well, I think that's fair. Earlier in the day, Stress prepared a graph talking about gold leagues. You've got another one prepared here for the Copenhagen Wolves Academy. And it quite clearly proves that they never come back from a deficit at 10 minutes. Every single one of them being a loss to Fischer.
Yeah, it's a team that relies on strong individual play in the laning phase, creating a lead, and then they're pretty good at having that lead and really snowball it and turn it into a victory. But again, as we saw from the Copenhagen Wolves Academy against like Origin, when they lost early game, it was the lane swap, but just the lane itself, they didn't really have a way of coming back. The comps they pick are very snowbally, like Fiora top lane is not a top lane that comes back if you fall behind. So it is really win the laning phase this game here for them, try and punish Roccat if they run a late game composition, and close out the game in time.
Well, we are talking about the teams, so let's take a look at the lineups for Roccat, who will be on the blue side in all 5 of today's games. We'll expand on that in a second. It is Overpower in the top lane, Jankos, the former king of First Bloods in the jungle, Nukeduck in the mid, Woolite AD carry, Vanda support, and Yamato Cannon, their recently announced coach, formerly of Meet Your Makers. On the red side, Copenhagen Wolves Academy with Morsu in the top lane, Kirai in the jungle, CosQ mid, Facility AD carry, Hybrid the support, and this is a team that does not have a coach with them on stage today. So how these two lineups match up in the early game could make or break both of their results in the set. We've talked about this already. I want to highlight the fact that Copenhagen Wolves got absolutely crushed in the final against Origin, and I'd like to talk about that with Kirai in particular, or Kyrie. It's going to be so hard because this is a guy who really did not step up. He had a lot of poor positioning, a lot of poor play. Sheepy, you were there with us that day.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the finals.
Yeah, I was expecting way more from CWA, and it just shows how much they faltered in the lane swap. They picked this fighter top lane who needs to be in the 1v1 or at least get decent amount of farm, so if he goes back into the 1v1 can actually come out ahead.
Yeah, that's the thing again with the pick and ban phase. It was like Aurelia top lane coming in, so of course Origin would lane swap on it. And we just saw the lack of, I will say, like coaching for a team, or maybe like analyzing replays for Copenhagen Wolves Academy, because they are a very different kind of team here. They rely on these good, strong players, and that's what they do. The lane swap for them was very clearly not practiced at all. So whenever Origin made a move in the swap, Copenhagen Wolves Academy just didn't know how to react. They just fell so far behind. They tried to like steal a Grump away from two guys from CWA in the jungle. And Roccat can look to do exactly the same. So unless Wolves Academy has improved in that department, now it's been like 3 weeks, Roccat can just lane swap every game and play around better strategic knowledge.
So you're talking about strategy for Roccat. We've already mentioned the laners from Roccat. Some have had impressive splits, some have not. COSQ got dismembered by Xpeke. He's now coming up against Nukeduck. We've seen Morsu have hit and miss games. He's now coming up against Overpow. Talk me through some of these matchups and individual plays and what you like and dislike.
I can see the top lane definitely go in favor of Copenhagen Wolves Academy here. I think Morsu is a fantastic top laner. And again, he plays these carry champions there. If you do gank for him, if he does get a good start, Overpow has struggled all split long in the European LCS. So I can definitely see a way here for Wolves Academy to get a big lead and use that to win the game.
Yeah, well, that is going to be our featured matchup for this game. The fact that it is going to be Overpow versus Morsu.
I'm sorry.
You had to do it. The one thing I do want to talk to Sheepy about is the difference in stats here. Overpow almost more than double the assists of Morsu. Morsu significantly higher when it comes to kills. What's your take on the reason behind it? Because their KDAs are relatively similar.
Yeah, that is actually something that you can see just in this playstyle. I'm also playing those fighters. He's going for the 1v1, he's going for the kills, and he needs the kills as well. It's not like he is, with Aurelia, getting an assist when he's going in. He will go for the kills, and if he doesn't get the kills, he will just falter and die.
Yeah, pick and ban phase is going to be so important here for Morsu as well. Because we know if he picks these lane bullies, almost we can call them, or laners who can snowball like Aurelia. I'm not really going to call it straight up a lane bully like that. Yeah. But it just makes it so easy for Roccat to strategize against them and swap on them. So we're going to have to see the pick and ban phase. Is it going to be safer for Wolves Academy? Do they have different kind of playstyles they can show that will be needed if they want to beat Roccat on paper? And that's the tricky part, because we always talk about Roccat like, oh, well, good players, blah, blah, blah. And then when we get into game, it all goes wrong. So on paper, Roccat will be favored because of these reasons here, but a lot of things can happen in game.
Well, there we go. On paper, you've heard it from the analysts. So, as we send it to our casters for picks and bans, it's very clear the Copenhagen Wolves Academy simply was not ready to face Origin in the Challenger Series finals, but according to Morsu, they've actually done their homework and they're ready for Roccat.
With the Origin game, we actually were really confident because we believe that we're a good team. But after the game, they told us all the things they did. They put in so much more work than we did, and it really showed. They knew everything we were going to do, and we had no answers. Yeah, this time we're actually prepared. We've been playing hard for 2 weeks, and I feel like we'll put up a good fight this time.
Well, we'll have to see if all that prep pays off this time. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Stress and I are taking over the caster desk as Roccat and Copenhagen Wolves Academy make the final preps for the picks and bans now. Stress, I think we've seen Copenhagen Wolves only once on this stage before, and it was not a pretty sight. They say they've done their homework this time. What do you think will change?
It's going to have to be a lot of homework that they'll have to have done, because I mean, picks and bans is difficult as it is. Roccat, there's a fair few things that you can kind of bank on. You have to ban Nukeduck a fair amount. You look at the flip side of that, though, difficult to ban out the Wolves.
Yes, it is very, very difficult indeed. We'll see what happens in that ban phase that's coming up right now. Picks and bans, this is game number 1. We'll see what the difference is for this team. Roccat on their side with a new coach as well. You see Yamato Cannon prowl in the background. So far, these bans, I think, are about what we expected. The Ahri, the Cassiopeia off the board, targeting out COSQ. And on the Wolves side, little bit more mixed.
Will we see another assassin ban like a LeBlanc away from Nuke Duck? That is the question. Zed already off the table. Nidalee has fallen off in favor with a lot of junglers now. We're still on 5.6, so didn't undergo those nerfs. The problem is it's Kyrie they're trying to take it away from. He had a brilliant series of games against Origin where he put in the regular season a Nidalee performance, managed to get a win there, and it's not the LeBlanc ban.
No, it is not. They decide to get rid of the Gragas. That will prompt Roccat to very quickly pick up the Hecarim for Overpow. We'll see what the Wolves Academy answer with right about now. Yeah, this is a little bit curious. I think they're almost daring Roccat to take the LeBlanc.
Almost. But one big thing right now with this Hecarim pick, if I'm not mistaken, Overpow never played Hecarim in the regular season at all. So this is Overpow's evolution here into this series. We know Overpow struggled a little bit in that top lane. Now he's coming back with a lane bully. Wolves Academy, on the other hand, though, they've picked up two fairly early game champions for themselves. When you look at a Thresh, always has lane presence, and the Rek'Sai now for Kyrie out of the jungle.
Yes, absolutely. But Roccat, they answer right back. They pick a Lulu very quickly, and the Urgot. This will be a very, very hard to break through front line for this team, and we're already starting to see not just in Rockat's side, or not just in Overpow's side, but all of Roccat, the changes that are coming through. Who knows how much of a hand Yamato's had in that, but they're definitely changing since we last seen them.
Bit of a touch of an unfortunate joke, but if you remember a lot of Rockat's regular season games, in the late game, Woolite started to get caught out a lot. That's not going to happen so much if you're on a tank like Urgot. Get the damage reduction, build towards tank. We'll see if he can scale into the late game. But talking of scaling, Morsu's got his hands on a very late game champion.
Yes, indeed. As we saw in that last series, Warlib will never get his hands on that champion, but Morsu will this time around. Zildi also goes ahead and grabs his Lucian. So Wolves going for a little bit of an all-around bridge, trying to put it all on the back of Jax at the end of the day. We'll see what Roccat answer with. They still have a flexible choice with the Lulu. Would not be surprised, though, to see Vander on that Annie pickup. And we'll see what they take in the jungle, too. Sejuani would work some serious wonders with this composition that's all about diving in.
Yeah, it would do, and we still could see that Lulu flex down to support. Looks like they're looking indeed for the Annie, and do indeed lock the Annie. So that will be a Lulu in the middle lane with likely Sejuani. Yes, it gets locked in. And one thing I want to touch on, going back to Morsu's Jax, 2-0 in the regular split for Challenger with that Jax. We'll see whether Morsu can continue that undefeated run.
We will indeed. Now on the Wolves Academy side, they have one more choice. We'll see what Cosq does go with. He was the brunt of many a ban from Roccat. We'll see what he does lock in. Definitely has some options on his side.
And Cosq as a player, when you look at him, he's very confident when it comes to his mid lane matchups. He's always saying, I can win 1v1, I always can. Didn't always work out that way, but he's a bit of an assassin player a lot of the time, and the Lulu play here from Nuke Duck, which is so far away from assassins, is going to be difficult now for Cosq on the favored LeBlanc from Nuke Duck to burst through. This is going to be tricky if Cosq doesn't get a good lead on this game.
Yeah, talk about giving yourself a bit of a handicap, too. It's just a little bit rough. Nuke Duck is not only on a very safe champion in Lulu, as you were saying, but he knows this inside and out. He knows this matchup, and I'm really curious to see how that mid lane does go, but, you know, Cosq, there's got to be a reason behind this confidence.
And the mid lane is a piece of the puzzle here, because you look at a Jax, you need to buy time to get him further into the game. That's what a Lucian and a LeBlanc will do with a Rek'Sai. So Wolves Academy should have a strong enough mid game to get Jax into the game as long as they don't fall too far behind. The problem on the other side, however, is look at the engage that comes out of Roccat. Hecarim, Sejuani, Annie, then you can get the position reverser. There's just so much that could catch out the Wolves Academy that Roccat could very quickly build themselves a good few fights in the mid game.
Yeah, and that we'll have to see if Roccat decides to go for, you know, slightly different gameplay than choices that they've been making over the course of the split. This is obviously a very different composition, so you would think that's what they go for. But the Wolves Academy, they're very much hoping for this to be a scale into late game, get the Jax. So we'll have to see how that goes. But why don't you guys tell us how you think this one is going to go? If Roccat can defend their LCS spot, go ahead and tweet us at LOL Esports. You know the hashtags. It's ROC win or CWA win. Get into first game right now. We're loading up onto the Rift. I think this one will be very explosive, and the longer it goes, that Jax is a ticking time bomb, Stress.
Ticking time bomb for sure. One thing is for sure, though, one LCS team retained their spot. Can a second do it?
That is always the question when it comes to the promotion tournament, and we'll find out shortly. Here we go on to the Rift. Roccat have definitely had a lot of time to think about this matchup. They chose Copenhagen Wolves Academy, being the higher seeded team, so they definitely knew who they wanted to face. in the promotion tournament, and all comes down to a best of 5 here to determine who will be in the LCS Summer Split.
And the funny thing about them choosing Wolves Academy is I actually kind of agree with Roccat on this. I feel like the only position that Roccat don't have in their favor could potentially be that top lane. But Overpower looks to have fixed a lot of his difficulties with champion. He was going to a lot of AP champions, a lot of Maokai, that kind of thing. He's now on a Hecarim.
Yeah, and this is a champion that should do quite well in lane. Morsu, of course, does know his way around this Jax as he takes a counter-strike. Overpow, he push back just a little bit, but he can return some damage. The Flask will keep him nice and healthy in that lane. I really got to think that Copenhagen Wolves Academy will be pressuring Overpow as much. That's what a lot of the LCS teams have been doing. You know, CosQ, they were saying that they did their homework on this team. They were prepared like they were not prepared for Origin. And you've got to think that if you want to find a weak point and exploit it on Roccat, that's the one on paper.
On paper, yes, but a weak point potentially in this game again. As you said, Overpow, but in this game, specifically if this ends up in standard lane matchups, Jax Rek'Sai is actually a fairly strong 2v2 if you end up with both junglers up there. 2v1, you're almost certain to get a kill on a Hecarim with no flash, depending on where Hecarim is in the lane. So watch for Morsu and Kairi maybe to start getting that synergy back up together in that top lane.
Right, and that of course begs the question, does Jankos hang out by the top side? Obviously, Sejuani is a little bit of a different beast when it comes to early game jungle pressure in that it's not so much. You want to wait and get your ultimate available to be able to do maximum damage and maximum lockdown. But we've seen a couple of variations of that style. If maybe Jankos has been watching Diamond Procs, we could see some early Man-Bear Pig.
Maybe we could, although the Man-Bear Pig isn't really in this game. It's just the
That's what I call
Rider.
Sejuani.
I know, but then
I know that's
think
also
Trevor, Trevor would have a word with you about that, because that's all about the flash.
Semantics, Stress, semantics. We'll see how this game does go. For now, it is just settling into those standard lanes. Hybrid moving quite far forward onto Woolite. Vasily, the flay backwards, the hook won't go. It's forcing the flash from Woolite. Very quick action as they pick up the quick level 2 in the bottom side. Wolves Academy really want to take an aggressive start.
And here's the lane dominance. The Thresh Lucian lane is just going to put out. Now Morsu stuns up in the top lane. This is just a small trade to begin the lane. But standard lanes you have to feel like Wolves Academy should like. But Morsu's actually gone aggressive and is now losing this trade.
Yeah, that's not the way you want to start it out with Jackson, with the jungler nowhere nearby. Speaking of junglers, actually, they're going to be trading each other's red buff. Clever and sneaky there, but we'll see if that distracts them from their normal jungle route. And, again, Morsu's got to be careful. He is alone and friendless on this top side. Jankos is nearby. He's definitely going to have to back after a camp or two.
Yeah, and Morsu just has to respect that top lane situation there. Level 3 on Hecarim means he has that added sustain, the movement speed, and the Q all at the same time. Morsu gonna have to sit back and not get farm for a couple more seconds here. And that's already hurting him. He's half the CS of Overpower. You expect Overpower to have somewhat of a lead in the beginning because of the Hecarim into Jax matchup, which isn't one we see very often, but Jax typically not good early game, but that's a hook.
Yeah, that is, and it is also a flay. The sun comes down on Vasily, and that's going to prompt Woolite to pop his heal. Vasily now burning down. He goes down. That's first blood as they overstay their welcome. Woolite picks it up, and he will be quite happy to pick that on an Urgot of all champions.
Oh man, at this point you have lane dominance as it is. The hook even landed there. And it doesn't look like Kairi is done here. Looks like we want to set something back up in the bottom lane. Flash play!
They may be able to get the revenge right here to get the knock-up. They do. It's Kairi able to take the kill, and Vander caught on a line, but Jankos is coming to the rescue as Hybrid and Kairi have to bail out. The flash on in. And the flay back. Can Hybrid stay alive? That's the question. It looks like, with the help of a few biscuits and his jungler, he will.
A little bit messy down in that bottom lane, but Kairi makes use of the time he spent in the bottom lane to net himself a kill. That's very important because when you look at the Wolves Academy in their games, if Kairi gets ahead, typically they are able to close a game out with a victory. If he falls behind, it's a very different story. We saw the goal graph to begin with.
Yep.
When the Wolves are behind, bad things happen for their win-loss ratio.
And it can definitely happen with Kairi in those games. We all remember what happened in their Origin series. Heartbreaking to see his Nidalee get shut down in that game 1, and it really, really turned the tables. This time around, he's definitely had a lot more pressure on the map. They've not really been able to shut him down, and the extra gold he's gotten from that kill will certainly help him get up to an item spike nice and quick.
And depending on which item spike he goes for, depends on where Wolves Academy can look to make plays here. Ideally, at this point, Wolves Academy would like some extra health, so I'm kind of expecting Kyrie to go for the Cinder Hulk. It just depends on whether this early kill makes him go Warrior just for this extra early pressure to try and get ahead and stay ahead, rather than look for a little bit more tankiness in the late game. It's a play style choice depending on what Kyrie wants.
Well, you were chiding me earlier about what Quickshot might have to say about certain things, and I think Deficio might have a few things to say about the Cinder Hulk on Rek'Sai Stress, but we'll have to talk about that one later. Take a rain check, but Overpow, he's bailing out in the 2v1 situation. Kyrie showed face, and now the horse has to head back to the stables.
He does, and you know, I was looking for something off that, but horse puns are not my forte, unfortunately.
You have not seen enough Unicorns of Love, it would appear.
I've watched a lot of them, but
you definitely
unicorns aren't horses. Unicorns are something different. Anyway, we got
not the
top lane gank.
Oh, now I'm just confused. We'll see what happens after that one. Jankos goes a little bit low, but Morsu already Overpow. He didn't leave. He comes back in, gets the Ignite on Morsu, ticking away. There should be enough damage there, and it will be. Jankos now trying to run away from Kyrie, but Overpow is more than a match for him. One level up. And we go back to the top lane after that. Facility and Hybrid unable to push in any farther on Woolite and Vander.
This is a very weird top lane setup. Morsu keeps trying to force things, and then Overpower kind of just trades back against him, ends up getting a CS lead, and Morsu quietly farms himself back up and tries to trade again. And at that point, both junglers show up and Morsu dies.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes Jax is a champion that can give you a false sense of security. Like, you think you can always make an outplay, and even if you have your jungler at your back, even if they do, you can play that 2v2. But you got to realize that it's always, you're a little dependent on the item spike, and sometimes if you get caught, you're not as immortal as you think you are.
And that's one of the issues Morsu has as a player, is he always feels like he can go for the 1v1s, he can go for the trades, and yes, sometimes it will earn them kills, it will earn them wins, but other times it's far too risky, and you're on a Jax, you want to scale up anyway, all the way to a Triforce and likely a Blade of the Ruin King. If you haven't got that time, you can't really do that, and he's only on the makings of a Phage. Now Kyrie goes aggressive, knowing that they have just recalled with Overpower in that top lane, so Kyrie's going to look to take something, but the only thing he can find here is a Grom, and both top and jungle here for Roccat are closing in on Kyrie, so he has to back away. Oh, this is risky. If he goes for this blue, this is risky. He's spotted Jankos, though.
He's going to be able to bail out now. Jankos will clear away the ward. He does send him a parting shot, sends him a message with the Praise Seeker, but this will be Jankos starting this one off. It was safely saved and secured by Jankos, as Kyrie doesn't want any part of that. Let's take a look down in the bottom side. Hybrid sends a hook. It goes a little wide from Woolite, who starts to push in pretty far, keeping even keel on farm, of course, with Vasily. Now Kyrie coming up to the top. Let's see if Overpow's in some trouble. Praise Seeker is going to go ahead and hit some minions. Kyrie trying to intercept, but there is the ultimate onslaught of shadows to bail back to the tower range.
And we were expecting this jungle pressure to be topside. That is exactly what the Wolves Academy are doing. The problem is it's not having a positive effect, really. The only place that Kyrie has had any impact is in the bottom lane, and Hybrid now has Vander hooked in, but he's got that stun charged up with him, as you do not want to go in on that death sentence.
You could see Facility just looking at, no thank you. There's an anti-stun, I'm good. We'll see what Kyrie does here to Nuke Duck. Just one shot. Let's see if he gets another one. CosQ not really there, so they'll be happy to zone him off the farm. You take a look at the difference, by the way, in those CS numbers in the middle, and Nuke Duck is definitely having some trouble against CosQ, but I feel like this is the matchup more than anything.
Speaking of trouble, there's some trouble bot lane.
Yes, there is. Facility there is going to be the Glacial Prison. He's going to be going down, but Vander could be the one to follow. Tanking up the tower shots he does. It's a 1-for-1 trade. Woolite now, he might be another victim of this as Morsu teleports in. Hyperkinetic position canceled, and Morsu still on the chase. Can he take down the Urgot? We'll have to find out.
Oh, has he got Leap Strike?
Yes, he does. He is in turret range. There's a teleport after the fact. Overpower looking to come in. Will he target out? It looks like it's going to be Morsu Counter-Strike on him, and he turns his attention to Kyrie. Does he have the damage? No, because he's flashed away from, and Overpower is going to get quadruple teamed. Kyrie comes up with the kill again.
Oh man, Overpower teleports in with no ultimate, no ignite, no kill potential in that situation. 1 versus 3. It was a well-coordinated dive under the turret to make sure they got Woolite. He was so low, no flash, no heal, no position reverses, so he was all out of defenses, and Nuke Duck stayed in the middle lane as CosQ roamed down. So that was the kind of plays that the Wolves Academy need to do to make sure that they can get Morsu and the rest of the team into the game. Roccat got drawn into a very aggressive situation that they really didn't want after those stuns landed under the turret.
Yeah, it seemed like it was all good to start it off. That was a very, very good ultimate out of Jankos, but the follow-up just wasn't quite there. Vander tanked way too many tower shots, And, you know, this is, I feel like, honestly, a little bit hallmark Roccat in that one of the reasons they play so passive in the early game over the course of the split is they would make plays like that, it would burn them, and then they would just say, okay, back off, we're not going to do it again.
One thing that bottom lane roam from CosQ did let Nukeduck do is farm up. We've just highlighted the CS difference. Now it's just about even in that middle lane, only an assist gained for CosQ. So Nukeduck will be sitting fairly pretty right now when it comes to his lane. And of course, Alulu's never really looking to kill a LeBlanc, but a hook in the bottom lane might put Woolite in the death chamber.
We'll have to find out in just a minute. Nukeduck pops a wild growth on himself as he sees Kyrie coming in his sights. CosQ had taken a big chunk of damage, but down on the bot, all is safe for now. We'll have to check back in on that one as Hybrid and Facility are just trying to poke down Woolite, but what they don't know is there is a wild Jankos hanging around the corner. Hook lands on Vander as Jankos does reveal himself. They ping him out. Kyrie nowhere near to be able to help out in this one, so it will have to be a passive Copenhagen Wolves Academy bot lane for the time being.
Kyrie once again, though, going into that top side jungle, looking for another play here, perhaps. Looking for mid lane. They do not have an ultimate available on Nukeduck. Does still have his flash, though, so it is still going to be very difficult to actually get in here. I'd like to have actually seen Kyrie just look to counter jungle, now that they know that Sejuani is bottom side. That's, in fact, what he's going to do now. So a little time wasted, but Jankos the other side of the map doing exactly the same thing.
Precisely. So once again, the junglers both pretty much in sync with each other, just decide to try and trade things out. You take a look at Kyrie. I guess you were right here. He does go ahead and pick up the Cinderhulk enchantment, but we'll talk more about the items later. Right now, Roccat is starting a 4-man dragon, and there is no response from the Wolves Academy.
Absolutely no response. And Overpower is about to get ganked in the top lane, but he does have his ultimate available. So this is going to be dragon for theoretically nothing. Overpower is just going to ult out if he even needs to.
Yeah.
Actually,
he's going to try to actually put a little bit more damage onto Kyrie. He does take a serious amount. There is, of course, the Bilgewater Cutlass available, but what is a slow to a horse?
What is a slow to a horse?
Not much, that's the answer, Stress.
What is a horse to a king other than a vehicular mode of transport that isn't a vehicle? It's a living mode of transport.
Yes, actually that is quite correct.
But now it's a push
back
up
to the game.
Top lane, exactly. Copenhagen Wolves Academy now looking to get some damage onto the top lane tower. I don't think they should be able to get this because Jankos is on his way up. Both ultimates still available. So the early game 2v2 you have to respect out of Jax and Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai's actually just left Morsu alone. Morsu getting greedy for this turret.
Yep, he
oh, it
hops
missed!
onto the tunnel, and then he turns his attention to Overpower to 2v2 in the top side, but that's a serious amount of damage after the Glacial Prison Lance. Morsu is going down, and Jankos is coming up with it. Overpower grabs another kill for himself. Kyrie falls down afterwards. And you're right, greedy was just the way to describe that. This is going to seed a tower over to Roccat as well. Morsu just stayed way too long. Kyrie had long bailed out. And that tower, it might be still standing with just a hint, and they can take another time, but that wasn't worth 2 kills.
Yeah, at this point, you have to respect this 2v2 from Roccat. Now that they've got their ultimates available, yes, we saw Overpower miss the ult, but at that point, it didn't even matter. Morsu just could not stand in that situation. He doesn't have the items yet to actually fight in any of these fights. And honestly, you look down the lineup of the Wolves Academy, I just wonder if any of their lanes have the items to fight, because right now the Wolves Academy are behind, and that is putting them at an item deficit. Only a BF sword currently for Lucian in the bottom lane.
Well, you know statistically what happens when the Wolves are behind in the early game. We have not seen them come back. We will see if the tables change this time around, but for right now, Roccat holding on to, if not a comfortable, a steady lead.
A steady lead. We'll see if they can expand on that, but one lead that has actually been reversed and expanded on is that bottom lane. It's now Urgot that is ahead in CS. We already talked about how he went back, got the Muramana, and is stacking that up. He is actually about to back. He just backed, and there's the Glacial Shroud. There we go. Woolite, you now got a little bit of tankiness under yourself. So you can step forward and get those position reverses all day long.
Yeah, he's definitely not the only one. Just about every member of Roccat, they have a little bit of defense on their side. Overpower, not quite so much, still working his way towards that Trinity Force, but the natural pseudo-tankiness of Hecarim is definitely helping him out in that regard.
One thing I'm wondering whether Woolite will have paid attention to was yesterday's LCK series. Space, when he was playing Urgot while ahead, actually upgraded his yellow trinket fairly early on an AD carry, which is weird because normally you'd see a blue trinket. And we were having this discussion when it comes to vision control of how useful is blue trinket when you're behind. Now, 2 extra wards for an AD carry is huge, but there's a catch in the bottom lane.
Yep, and Facility immediately pulled back out by the Lantern from Hybrid. Kyrie was there as well, and as a result, Roccat decide not to push in. So a quick tense moment for them. It looks like it may continue as Jankos and Nuke Duck look for a dive spotted by the pink ward. Wolves Academy just bail out. That is a 3-man Glacial Prison, but there isn't enough follow-up just yet. Now there is as the Onslaught of Shadows comes in. Do they have the damage to pick off Facility? The answer is no.
A little bit of mistiming there out by Roccat when you look at things. That engage with the position reverser, although it was good to get a couple of summoners burned, they now get a turret, which makes the entire thing worth it as a whole, but that was a lot expended down there as COSQ has been pushing the mid lane, so turret trade is even with Morsu pushing the top. That's actually Copenhagen Wolves Academy capitalizing on Roccat using a lot of ultimates and pressure down in that bottom side.
Yeah, and if they had stayed a little bit longer, tried to push that one, they'd be even in more trouble as Morsu was attempting to push in the second-tier turret. He'll just leave that farm to Overpow. And then you see a lot of roaming from Copenhagen Wolves Academy trying to go through this jungle and see if they can't get a catch. But all of Roccat hanging around Dragon Pit. Is going to be 2 more minutes before that does respawn. Remember, they did get the first. So time on the clock now, just past 16 minutes on the board. Copenhagen Wolves Academy, they have decided to leave the lanes for the much less certain jungle roam through. Kyrie going to be grabbing a little bit more farm. It's basically been his second home this game.
It's been a second home, but in the regular season for Kyrie, it was a bit of a deceptive, inviting treat because he got killed a lot in the enemy jungle, but Woolite in the middle lane.
Speaking of getting killed, he's going to hyperconnect position, reverse his way with COSQ, who's going very low. A double teleport coming in now as Nuke Duck picks up COSQ. In comes the horse. He turns around, comes back again, comes on to Kyrie, and Hybrid is there to try and push him off. But Roccat still holding strong here. It's a 4v5 right now with COSQ, still waiting to respawn. Turret goes down in the bottom, courtesy of Facility, but Roccat don't care about that. They're busy taking kills and taking towers of their own.
Yeah, towers go down in mid and bot, but Roccat aren't done yet. They want this middle lane turret as well, and this is going to be so difficult for Wolves Academy to actually fight this in a lot of the rest of the game if this mid tower falls, because you want Jax out split pushing on the map in the mid and late game, and you can't do that if you don't have control at the minimum of your own jungle. And this early, a mid inner tower falling is about to reduce the vision of the Wolves Academy completely.
Right, and the secondary problem with losing so much control of their jungle, there's many less places that Kyrie can place his Rek'Sai tunnels safely. And,
yeah,
you know, to the luck of Copenhagen Wolves Academy, Roccat haven't stumbled upon too many of them just yet, but it is very difficult to pull off a flank when you can't even get safely inside your own jungle.
And just because Rek'Sai can't pull off a flank, that makes it way easier for Overpow to pull off some flanks of his own with teleport plays. If Wolves can't deward their own jungle, Overpow will be able to teleport in and ult into the backline again and again in this game. So Wolves have to be very careful on where their wards go down, because Morsu can't afford to overextend. Still not at Trinity Force yet on Jax. It's a little bit early for him to have 2 items completed from that top lane role. But one thing I kind of want to talk about when it comes to Morsu is he is naturally a split pushing player. That's what he loves to do on just about every single champion he plays. Normally ends up about 40 CS ahead of his opponent, but Facility is getting hunted down, manages to just dash his way away from the galloping onslaught of Overpower.
While that's all going down, Roccat take the incentive to go ahead and grab themselves Dragon number 2. You do, however, see some answers. The Copenhagen Wolves Academy not sitting idly by. Kyrie and Hybrid now ready to join Morsu in this top side. Overpower should get there to defend, but what can one pony do against 3? This tower's starting to go down fast, and I think the Wolves Academy perfectly happy with taking that trade for now.
Yeah, I'm actually impressed by this call out of Wolves Academy. It's a little risky because there's no wards, so they're overstaying potentially. Depends whether Overpower gets the ult.
He does get the ult. He does have some serious damage. In comes Jankos and Vander, but do they have enough to follow up as Overpower slays Hybrid? He does manage to pick that one up. Kyrie tunnels away after he moves in on the Gromp. COSQ trying to bail out as Facility had already made his way out, so they lose one at the end. Just the support. Close calls as they did stay a little bit close for comfort, but it could have been far worse, Stress.
It was a decisive call out of the Wolves. The problem was they didn't have the vision around them in that side of the jungle, and that's Rockat's jungle. That's not where you should be going.
It's always been Rockat's jungle, as comfortable as Kyrie's been getting in it. That's right. You cannot underestimate the amount of damage that they can put out when they find you. They will put a wallop on you on that side. And now they do get out with just a loss of Hybrid. Not to see what they do from here. They've got some waves to push back, but they're sending COSQ on the bottom side, which means Facility and Hybrid can take over control in the mid.
Roccat right now don't exactly have a lot to do other than ward up. You look at it, there's 3 lanes pushing into the enemy team. They're not grouped up, so this is their time to kind of farm up a little bit here out of the jungle. And get a lot of wards down, and then group up together again. Overpower still no teleport for about a quarter of the cooldown, about a third actually looking at it. Morsu's teleport is available. I don't really expect him to split push with that vision in the river for Roccat right now, but it always will be an option in Morsu's mind.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he decides to use it to that end. I can't help but feeling that Copenhagen Wolves do not want to fight. They've definitely shown that one sign of danger, one sign of Roccat, and they just decide to move away from it. The problem is there's so much mobility on this side of Roccat. They will want to hunt people down. Thanks to Jankos, thanks to Overpower, they have the ability to do it. If they get close enough, Vander can just flash Tibbers on their face. He's not got that available right now, but by the next time the Dragon comes around, that will be available naturally, of course. You could see a feint at a Baron play from Roccat. They want to draw Copenhagen Wolves Academy out into the open. We'll see what happens here as Woolite. Kozq going very, very low there. He turns some damage around. There is the passive popped. Kozq moves in on Woolite, but he's just very, very tanky. Kozq's going the wrong way now. This could be some trouble.
Oh, Jankos is here.
Oh, he lands the ultimate, and that will be a pickup for the Boar Rider. Jankos.
It's a distraction, though. Look at mid lane. Look at mid lane right now. The Wolves are already pushing. They don't have the minions, but the other key factor here for Roccat is they can only really fight when their ultimate's available, and Wolves Academy a little bit too scared there because of the impending Vander coming down there. Without that minion wave, there was not a lot the Wolves Academy could do.
Right, and this does speak to the mobility. There were 3 or 4 on the top side, or closing in on the top side. They really only needed Jankos to take the kill, but still the Wolves Academy just didn't want to get anywhere near. Now Kyrie trying to back away from the incoming Roccat team as Overpower leads the charge. He will make it away for now, but will they chase him on the way through? That's the question. Jankos seems to be making for that general direction. It could be a smite fight over the blue. No, the Wolves Academy are just going to give this one up.
I wouldn't want to fight Jankos in a smite fight right now, but
Kyrie's got a Lantern Insurance. It's going to go over to Jankos nonetheless.
it will, but at this point in the game, Roccat don't have Sejuani ultimate available, but Woolite is about to come up. If Overpower can get himself into the fight as well, it should be okay, but Roccat are kind of ult dependent. They are quite a way ahead though, so do have a lot of damage in their composition right now. But there is a lot of wave clear on Wolves Academy when it comes to that culling being available.
Just spent very good buy facility right there. And when you take a look at that, you can talk about how worried these guys are, but the proof is in the pudding right there. A very early Quicksilver Sash on to Facility. We'll see if he has to use that quickly as Roccat pushing in on the tower. Copenhagen Wolves are just backing away from this. That's given up.
That's an insanely fast Quicksilver Sash. Normally you don't even see that in a game, even if it's desperately necessary.
And this is on a mobility-based AD carry Lucian.
And it's normally after the second item. Overpower, dodges the hook. But that's how much crowd control is on the Roccat lineup. Every single member of the Roccat team has some kind of crowd control. Kozq, however, he's taking the split push, man.
Not the only one who can split, but he does get a little bit spooked, backs away as a few members of Roccat take their back to base. He sends a few minions to crash up in a wave against that inhibitor turret. So Copenhagen Wolves Academy, well behind, they are definitely not rolling over and letting themselves be beaten by this Roccat squad. They are trying to force attention wherever they possibly can. Dragon is available in another minute. Copenhagen Wolves Academy, if they can, they could sneak it, but Roccat, they've definitely showed exceptional control in this game so far of that particular objective.
I mean, when you look at Roccat throughout the season, I don't want to go too far on this, but Roccat, that's never really been their problem, was actually competing in the games. The problem in at least the lower half of the standings was when Roccat were facing teams that they were fairly even with, was actually closing the game out. That was where Roccat really struggled, and that's when Woolite kind of would get caught out from time to time. So, I mean, it's not too unsurprising that Roccat have a lead here, just will they be able to close the game out?
That is always the question when talking about Roccat, but this time around they have a comp that, even if that does happen to them, if Woolite does get caught, as you mentioned it, the Urgot is just not a champion that really even has to be the focus for Copenhagen Wolves Academy. There really isn't a single easily blow-upable target outside of Vander, and even if you take down Vander, fine, you've neutralized the Tibbers. If it's already down, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Those remaining 4 members can still do so much work. Again, as we said in the beginning of the game, it's all on Morsu if they can get to this late game. They want to utilize him. He does have the Trinity Force and Blade of the Rune King to be able to split push, but he hasn't been doing it. There are too many waves crashing against Copenhagen Wolves Academy.
Yeah, and meanwhile, down in the Dragon Pit, two-man Dragon being done out by Roccat, and it's all because of the warding they put down early, managed to prevent Wolves Academy from getting anywhere near the Dragon Pit, so that is a very easy third Dragon for Roccat in this game.
Yeah, and they will get the mobility that comes with it. We'll see what COSQ can do on this top side. It just seems that even if they do get to that late game scaling, imagine with 0 Dragons facing down number 5 from Roccat. That's the way this game has been trending so far. And Roccat aren't leaving too many openings for the Copenhagen Wolves to really push in anywhere. You can see COSQ's forced to back off on the top again.
There's a slight issue for Roccat though. Morsu just got his Blade of the Ruined King and has a Trinity Force. As soon as he gets level 2 boots, he should be able to sit up against Overpower fairly confidently. It kind of depends on ultimates being available, whether he can land the stun. And that Ignite that Overpower has does add to Overpower's dueling potential when it comes to actually getting a kill on a low health. If he was running that Red Smite, it would be even more of a problem for Morsu. But at this point, Morsu is a bit of a danger. Somebody has to be able to duel him, and the later this game goes, Morsu is not going to be too unhappy of sitting in a 1v1 lane.
Copenhagen Wolves Academy, they opt for the safe move for just a minute, hiding in the brush, but I feel like they could have gotten some serious damage on the turret. Instead, they play a little bit more passively. They clear the crab away, but there's not going to be a dragon there for a while. We'll have to see what happens as Roccat not sitting idly by again, just pushing out the waves in the mid. Copenhagen Wolves Academy want to try and get someone into an uncomfortable situation, maybe grab a catch, but they're definitely not interested in taking a straight fight, especially not with gold deficit they're currently facing, not to mention dragons.
One of the problems Roccat have had right up until this point as Vander's laying topside wards is that they got that mid tower down nearly 10 minutes ago and haven't really used it from there. Kyrie will take that one away, but they haven't really been able to use that tower being down. Roccat haven't really grouped. They've kind of let Copenhagen Wolves clear out a lot of waves just on their own in the side lanes, which has actually turned a lot of the CS difference on its head when you look at it. Now Lucian up on CS against Warlight. Jax has a fair amount of farm himself, as does LeBlanc. So Roccat haven't really done anything with that tower being down. They need to start looking for other towers and try and push their lead.
Yeah, so they're sending 3 members topside. There's still some defense here from Copenhagen Wolves to try and push them back. To their credit, they have been pushing in sideways, but you're right, they haven't been pressuring Copenhagen Wolves, and they haven't really been using their advantage to build it into an even larger advantage. The investment just hasn't really been there.
But they have been able to get dragons at the same time, and that's going to be a very key factor, is the closer they get to that 4-5 dragon point where they force Copenhagen Wolves Academy to come and fight them, that's going to be problematic. Now this is a very imposing team in front of a tower when you look at it. As long as Sejuani has an ultimate, and Annie has an ultimate, and Hecarim, you can just sit there and say, you cannot defend this turret because we have too much engage potential. Here's the 1v1 though.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this one shapes up. Overpow sitting in a lot of minions, but now Morsu going a little bit low as well. Overpow getting taken pretty low. He's going to have to ult his way out with the flash and the jump. Does Morsu have enough in the tank? He's only got 2 legs, and Overpow seems to be outrunning him right now, but the pony is being chased away.
He is being chased away. I want to kind of see. I wonder when Morsu actually used his Blade of the Ruined King very early on in that fight. So as soon as Overpow got his mobility available again, Overpow just ran away. There was no real way of Morsu catching him, but there's the 1v1 potential that Morsu is going to look for in every opportunity in this game.
A Jax will most certainly be a Jax as long as you've got the items to prove it. He's going to have to back away, though, so for now, Overpow's done the job he needed to exactly, was able to defend against that push. And again, Copenhagen Wolves Academy, they've not gotten much on the map for themselves in quite some time. Not keeping too far behind in gold. Yes, it's 4,000, but at 29 minutes, it matters far less than it did 10 minutes ago.
It does matter a little bit less, but as this game gets longer and longer and those dragons start ticking up, it is only 2 minutes until the next one. If Roccat secure this one, Wolves Academy are going to be a little bit worse for wear here. They can't really afford to let a 4th dragon go over to Roccat, so they need to get wards down in the next 30 or 40 seconds here around the Dragon Pit, force Roccat away, but we've already talked about it. Roccat have got the majority of their ultimates available. There's no real way for stepping into a choke from the Wolves Academy. They cannot get baited in just trying to secure a dragon, because one dragon here could cost Wolves Academy very dearly if Morsu can't do something else. It's round 2 for Overpower.
Round 2 fight, but Nukeduck has joined the party, and that is a very big horse. 1v2 is not fair. Kyrie is going to come and even up the odds, but they'll decide to declare a momentary ceasefire.
Roccat, however, seeing that ultimate, are turning for Baron. I like this call here because Nukeduck should be able to just waste enough time. Kyrie doesn't have an ultimate available either, and Roccat right now not so much uncontested on the Baron. It depends on where Visility and Hybrid go and how they can compete against this. But this is fairly slow Baron right now, but it should be there.
It is a slow Baron, but there really just isn't an answer right now. Everyone's focused on chasing down this Lulu Nuke. He might be able to get himself into execution range. It looks like they should be able to tap him, knock him down, but still, as slow as this Baron is going, Roccat, there's nobody there but Hybrid to defend it. He's at the fountain. I can't believe this. There's the hyperkinetic position reverser. Woolite pulls Hybrid in. That's going to be the Baron going down. Yanko secures it. Hybrid will be the cherry on top as they start chasing through. Finally, Nuke goes down. That was the deepest Lulu I think I've ever seen.
I really think that is, but that is completely worth it if you are on Roccat right now. So not only are they imposing standing in front of a tower with all of their ultimates available, now they've got the Baron buff on top of that, and that will shut Morsu down. Now all you've got to do is, I guess, wait for the TP to be available for overpower for some extent, but now you just kind of sit in a lane, and Morsu cannot split push against a Baroned up team. The turrets will die too fast in front of Roccat, and that was just good decision making once the Rek'Sai ultimate came through. Here's actually the Baron getting taken down by Roccat, and the teleport came out from overpower. Meanwhile, on the bottom side of your screen, you can see that the Wolves Academy have taken the Dragon, but it's Dragon for Baron. I think Roccat will take that every day of the week.
They certainly will, but on the flip side of the equation, Copenhagen Wolves Academy needed to get that one on the board, deny as much as they can so that they can prevent that eventual 5th Dragon and get to the later stages of the game where they really want to be. Yes, CosQ won't be as effective. Yes, Facility won't be as effective. But if they're putting it all in Morsu to begin with, well, they have to be able to stall this game out. We'll see what they're able to do here, throwing the minions away as Baron empowered as they are.
Yeah, and Roccat stepping up to the plate here in front of the base. Ultimates are not quite available. Jankos still waiting on his. Vander does have Tibbers. One thing is Visility has 1.5 items, or 1 2/2 of items, at 32 minutes into the game on an AD carry. That is so far behind right now when it comes to damage. They've hooked in Jankos, but he's very tanky.
Yes, and he's got his ultimate. Spends on Morsu. Hyperkinetic position reversed. They look for Nuke. Do they have the damage? No, they don't. Morsu is already going down. Jankos and Nuke may be blinking, but Roccat is still standing strong. They should be able to knock down the inhibitor turret, heading onto the middle inhibitor. Copenhagen Wolves Academy have nothing left in the tank facility. Runs away, tail between his legs as he has to pop his heal. Woolite was chasing him down, and Roccat get everything they wanted and back away safe.
And that was with Jankos' ultimate not really landing on anybody. It flew all the way up onto the top side of his screen, but Roccat with the Baron, with the lead, are in full control of this game. And Woolite has now picked himself up a more of Malmortius to go alongside that Frozen Heart. So again, no need to be caught out when you can catch the enemy out and put yourself right in them.
Yep, it seems to suit the way Woolite wants to play this one, and there is no fear whatsoever for Roccat. They have the Lulu ultimate in case they do have any of them getting caught, but you can see how tanky just about every one of these members is. Vander, as long as he's able to get the Flash Tibbers down, that's perfectly fine, and Copenhagen Wolves have been completely ignoring him this game after the beginning of it when they focused a little bit in the lane.
And speaking of Woolite, because I feel like I've maybe been a tad harsh on him at this point. You remember back to his days on the Copenhagen Wolves before, and just Woolite in general. He's a very good player when it comes to getting a lead and getting ahead. It's only been a couple of blips here, and again, we're seeing now in this game, 3-2-3, Woolite is having a good game here on Urgot, and we'll see whether he can continue that through this series.
Yeah, it's very easy to write off an aggressive playstyle as someone who can get caught a lot. That's just a risk that you run, and I feel that highlighting the Urgot choice, as popular as it's been now, it just really fits that style. He wants to be a forward player, which is of course difficult as an AD carry, and this makes it work.
And it turns a quote-unquote weakness into a major strength here. Now, if you're inclined to step forward with an ult like this,
you can definitely do some work. Hybrid is already down. They're going to try to pick off CosQ. He should be able to make his way away. Morsu in the middle of them all, but this isn't where he wants to be. Wants to be splitting out. Woolite gets himself Wild Growth. Kyrie now going low. CosQ dueled out by Overpower Facility, having little to no impact as he's chased back to Fountain. Inhibitor number 2 now going down. Roccat, they are looking to start closing this game out. 34.5 minutes in, a commanding lead for them as they push Copenhagen Wolves Academy further and further back into the base.
And this is going to be Rockat's game by the looks of things. It's going to be Naxxus turrets going down as well. Wolves just do not have the damage to fight this major tank line.
Big Tibbers onto Kyrie. They take him down. They're losing members by the second inhibitor. Naxxus turrets, I should say. One's already gone, the other's gonna fall. They've got minions at their back. That's gonna be game. GG number 1 to Roccat, and they're only 2 away from retaining their LCS spot in the summer.
It's going to be easier said than done, though, for Roccat, because let's take a look at it. Roccat looking very strong in the game, forcing objectives when they could, making sure they stayed on top of Dragons in the early game. You look over at Copenhagen Wolves Academy, though. They, in the early game, were fairly decisive. They put the kills onto Rek'Sai early, trying to get Kyrie a lead, but they just fell behind. And we highlighted the stats in the pregame is Wolves Academy, when playing from behind, very, very difficult. In fact, they've never come back from being behind in the entirety of the Challenger Series split.
And that continues now. So they did fall behind. They weren't quite as behind. They didn't snowball out of control until the very end there when Roccat just were able to take massive fight after massive fight. But also a big credit to Woolite because he did exactly what he needed. He got in the front. He was able to launch off an insane amount of Acid Hunters and then basically just wait for someone to get close enough to position reverse. And the rest of Roccat did exactly what they needed to. So very good synergy there. You can see them. I feel like the time off, it's done them a lot of wonders against this Copenhagen Wolves Academy squad in game number 1.
It really has. And 4-2 and 5, Woolite having a great game in that. Did exactly what he needed to. Also, Jankos, maybe back
Didn't
on
die.
3-0-7 on Sejuani, certainly his champion. If you're the Copenhagen Wolves Academy now, what do you change up in your pick ban phase? To me, I don't feel like their bans were too bad in that game.
I think you got to get rid of the Hecarim.
Possibly.
Sejuani was a choice, but the Gragas, they definitely wanted to make sure they didn't give that one up. I feel like Hecarim is just such a strong pick in general, and Overpow, we talked about maybe sealing some of Woolite's weaknesses, turning them into strengths. It definitely did the same thing for Overpow.
Yeah, it did. I wonder whether they'll look to the Urgot, because it did cause a lot of problems for the Wolves Academy, and it's not a champion we've seen them play at all. So I wonder whether their focus is going to go on to Woolite in that AD carry. But honestly, I feel like Roccat just overall in this game were just stronger.
Yeah, and this is what a lot of people have said over and over again. Everyone always says Roccat, they're the team, they perform in scrims, but you never know if they're going to step up. And over the course of the split, a lot of it didn't materialize. But here, this is definitely a very, very powerful team. They knew what they were doing. Not without error, they made a few mistakes, but none that the Copenhagen Wolves Academy could really safely or otherwise punish.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with Roccat, really, is Roccat are perhaps have been the Bruce Banner of teams in the EU LCS, in that they're nice and mild-mannered, but the problem is they hulk up in scrims. They need to get angry here on the stage and make sure they turn into the Hulk when it counts. And game 1 was certainly towards that. If they can do that for 2 more games and maybe look to close this series out quickly, maybe we'll rename them to the Hulk.
Yeah, well, we'll see how far the rage meter goes. For now, though, we're going to shoot it quickly over to our analyst desk to break that one down.
Thank you so much, you stressed pirate. Let's talk a little bit. I'm having fun with names today. Let's talk about the game. I think fairly convincing for Roccat. They punished Copenhagen Wolves Academy for some of the decisions that the Wolves Academy are doing. But I want to go back to picks and bans. I like putting Woolite on a tank, because he plays like a tank. So let's actually take a look at the 2 team compositions really quickly. And one of the weaknesses of Roccat was Woolite's positioning and getting caught out. When you're an Urgot, you don't care because you want to be in that position. You want to be in the thick of things.
So you can get in and you can swap the LeBlanc in the late game anyway. So that worked fine for them. But the pick and ban phase here, the really surprising thing for us was the LeBlanc pick coming in for Cosq, because Lul had already been shown, which is a great matchup into LeBlanc to just basically make it a farm lane, and you don't really have any kill pressure on her. And you'd already seen like Hecarim, Sejuani, like you knew these big tanks were coming. So LeBlanc at like 30 minutes just run out of options. There's nobody she can really assassinate. So it meant their early game for Copenhagen Wolves Academy, as we talked about, was going to be about, can we snowball our lane so well through the LeBlanc that we can now have her roam between lanes and get the Jax fed and then get the Lucian fed. Otherwise, we're simply going to fall so far behind composition-wise in the team fights.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the story of the game. In the beginning, we see a very heavily early game concentrated team composition with Rek'Sai, Jax, LeBlanc, Lucian. Going there for like early mid-game split push later on. Didn't really get rolling. The Jax against the Hecarim didn't work out. They didn't get the snowball rolling. Kirei was stranded in the bot lane side of the map for a longer time.
Yeah.
And at this point, you just didn't have a lead to snowball anymore.
That was really a big deal, how the jungle focus from Copenhagen Wolves Academy in the early game, while they were pushing the bottom lane, was still there. Kirei walked down to look at a lane that was being pushed into the tower of Roccat, while this no-flash Hecarim is running around top lane on his own. Like, that should be the focus for him, because you know that Jax can snowball. We saw the trades later on when the Trinity Force and Blade of the Ruined King was completed for Morsu. He could beat the Hecarim one-on-one. That was going to be one of the ways for them to play it, and obviously the whole idea behind the comp. Not go down bottom lane and try and get Lucian ahead in the start. That's just super weird for me, but it's something where I feel like Kirei has often shown that he struggles when it comes to finding the right place on the map.
Yeah, and it's something you actually mentioned right in the very first moment of talking about Copenhagen Wolves Academy. In lane swaps and situations and scenarios, CWA demonstrated against Origin they weren't making the right decisions. This particular game, they didn't fall behind as far as they did against Origin, as the gold was pretty even for a long time. What did you think of the rest of the mid-game? Once the laning phase started ending and we started seeing Roccat grouping for some objectives and Copenhagen Wolves trying to play a little bit of the split push.
I mean, we got to see how Roccat at first were either trying to get a kill and then being like, okay, we've already set up the other waves to push the other way, so there's no real like objective for Wolves Academy to take. They did try a few times to trade like tower for it, which was okay. The problem was that it was so easy for Roccat to just decide, okay, we slow push top lane now. We can see the wave come entire time into the tier 2 tower and just walk up with 4 guys. And Wolves Academy just never reacted. They just sat back in their own lanes. I'm not sure what they were looking for, but there was just some very easy free towers for Roccat that just made it impossible.
Luckily, we do actually have Roccat backstage talking about that Game 1 win, so we should be able to catch a glimpse of that. A little bit more relaxed than we saw from Reason Gaming earlier in the day. Remember, Yamato joined the squad. Sheepy, if you were looking at the team, what do you think?
I think that's pretty much what I would imagine them right now. They didn't do too many mistakes. They had a more mid to late game composition and they played it fairly well. And they just had a win from there on out. And I think that Copenhagen Wolves a little bit ended up without any kills and didn't really know what to do and chasing kills and doing a lot of stuff.
Well, let's actually pull the replay up and talk about that. You know, Nuktak was able to pull so much focus from the Wolves Academy. Take a look at the minimap and maybe Sheepy Deficio, what was your take on this play?
So what you see here is the Jax dueling out with the Hecarim and see the Lulu coming, then the Rek'Sai comes as well. And what they try to do here is trying to go for the kill, don't go for the kill, then suddenly they see the Lulu out of position and this is a free kill. And meanwhile, while they chase down the kill, they don't get the idea that maybe somebody is missing here.
I mean, I can accept that Unicorns of Love can make plays like this and still win games, but for Copenhagen Wolves Academy, because they're already behind, this is just such a solo queue play, honestly, because the Baron gets taken, Nuktak dies in the very end after Baron goes down, and the worst thing is Wolves Academy had a ward, you can see it right here on your screen, it was outside the Baron pit. They also didn't see the rest of the members for such a long time, so they knew they were on Baron. Yet 2 guys were sitting in mid lane being like, should we go kill Lulu or should we go Barons? Like, they didn't really know where to go and everyone was still chasing these Lulu in the bottom lane. Like, that's what you do in solo queue when you value a kill over a Baron. But it was the same kind of plays that happened for Wolves Academy so often, and that's why we say they are this team here who needs to win the early game really hard and snowball from there, because in terms of strategy and like shot calling, they're just not on the same level as some of the other teams.
And I think that was actually a great opportunity for Copenhagen Wolves Academy to come back. They have the Rek'Sai, they have the Jax had TP. They can easily double TP in. There were 3 people on Baron, they got super low as well. So.
Lulu was stuck bottom lane, no way for her to join, and suddenly you have a 4v5 situation where you can maybe even get that Baron for yourself. Like, that's one of these quick calls you have to be able to make to punish if Roccat makes a mistake like this, or not a mistake, but a play like this. Wolves Academy just didn't do it and just figured, let's just get that Lulu down. And
one more thought before we wrap this one up. Copenhagen Wolves Academy will be on the red side in Game 2. They elected to play red side for their respective games. That's Games 2 and 4. Sheepy, one thought after seeing the comps and the picks and bans and knowing Copenhagen Wolves Academy reliance on an early game, what's your take on them coming into Game 2 on red side with the ability to counterpick, considering how picks and bans went in Game 1?
I think that's a strength for them because they should play over the stronger lanes. And if they have that possibility to get the better pick for the mid lane and maybe snowball over it, I think that is probably the way we can see them winning a game.
Well, we'll have to find out if it does work out, because as I mentioned, we do need to step away from a moment. And when we return, it will be Game 2 between the Copenhagen Wolves Academy and Roccat. Don't go anywhere.
Oh, baby.
I feel that my mouse is the end of my hand, you know? It's like my hand. It's connected with my brain and body.
There is going to be the Glacial Prison. He's going to be going down, but Vander could be the one to follow. Taking up the tower shots he does. It's a 1-for-1 trade. He does get the ult. He does have some serious damage. In comes Jankos and Vander, but do they have enough to follow up as Overpow slays Hybrid? He does manage to pick that one up.
Let's get the trash, get the trash.
Left blank! Jax! Peel for Urgot! Urgot! Jax! Go next! Go Kirei!
It's going.
I slow? Okay.
And they're only 2 away from retaining their LCS spot in the summer.